Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guests today are Mark Zalubas, Chief Technology Officer, Merlin International, and Mike Dye, Chief Technology Officer for Civilian NetApp U.S. Public Sector. Gentlemen, how are you today?
Fantastic, John.
Very well, John. Thank you.
Well, everyone's talking about this hybrid cloud. Many federal agencies are considering moving to the cloud. This transition is more than a lift and shift to one of the major cloud offerings. Merlin International and NetApp have combined to let you take advantage of what is called the hybrid cloud. Let me ask you a question here, Mark. Moving to this cloud has matured. It used to be you get the low-hanging fruit and maybe email and shift over that, but there's no low-hanging fruit anymore, is there?
Well, I think there is still low-hanging fruit, but I do agree that it's getting a little bit more complicated with what people are doing to get to the cloud. It used to be looking at what you've got and figuring out how to take the entire thing and move it into the cloud. And now it's looking at part of it remaining on your own data center and part of it moving into the cloud. So that's where the hybrid cloud comes in.
So, Mike, this makes it much more complex, doesn't it?
It does, because now you have to worry about your data and where it's going to reside and your access patterns. It creates a lot of different intricacies that have to be thought about.
I like checklists, and before I do my radio show, I go through it's just like a pilot, I guess, And I'm thinking, well, there's got to be a checklist for moving to the hybrid cloud. I don't know if it's that easy.
Well, what you kind of look at the checklists that were put together to move people to the cloud as a whole, and then realize that you're going to have to apply that checklist multiple times depending on how many clouds you're moving into simultaneously. So it could be that today your application is in one place, you own everything, you know where it is, you know where your data is, and you can see it. Now you're moving it into 2 or 3 locations, but you still need to view it as a singular thing. You need to make sure the SLAs of all of the clouds you've chosen are high enough. And so, yeah, it's like looking at multiple checklists at the same time.
So, Mike, where does NetApp fit in this transition?
It's obviously, as a storage company, we're worried about your data and making sure that it's protected and is safe and is reliable. We don't want any kind of corruption, and we want to make sure that you can access it in the right place and at the right time. So in a hybrid environment, Mark talked about SLAs. That's a great launching pad, because you want to understand the latencies that you're dealing with and how users need to get to that data and what their feel has to be when they touch it. You don't want to have something that's going to have them with the clock spinning. So we need to make sure that we get that data where it needs to be at the right time.
Mark, I'm teaching a class in January in the graduate school at Georgetown, and I'm trying to put together my class together now, but I'm wondering, what good is that going to be? Everything's going to change by December. And I think many agencies are in a situation where they're considering a hybrid cloud, but they have to design a system that it's flexible for potential changes in the future.
Absolutely. I think you're always designing with change in mind. And this is no different. So I think that as you undertake different prototypes and different examples, you learn things, and then that better informs what you're going to do in the future. But there will be new tools built in the future. There will be new models that roll out, and you've constantly got to be upgrading your ideas.
So that's why a company like NetApp is constantly innovating, because it's changing all the time.
Well, to Mark's point, we thought the IT industry as a whole is a fast-changing world. I mean, I've been in it for a very long time. My father started a computer store back in 1980. I mean, I'm showing my gray hairs here. But it is accelerated with the cloud. You look at what the cloud providers do for their customers and the kind of services that they offer. It's breathtaking, the depth that they have gone to and the kind of options that you have available to you now. It's just shocking.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that as well, because you've seen in manufacturing situations where you've got old factories, but there was a deep investment made and it had to be amortized over a number of years. And then these new startups would happen with new technologies, and they would just beat the efficiencies of the old factories. If you think of IT, it's really the same way with the cloud, is that you've built on the basis of some older technologies, which are wonderful and they were great at the time. But now where native cloud applications are being born, you have to take a look at that and say, I almost can't afford to use up or amortize the rest of my old investment, because the new one offers me such a great performance improvement scalability improvement, efficiency, ease of flexibility, and I have to pay attention to it.
And so a company like Merlin International has to have people that are inside agencies, and they have to listen very carefully to all the dependencies, because maybe some agencies aren't aware of what some of the changes may imply. Huh?
That's right. You have to look at it from both sides. You have to look at it from the standpoint of, do we understand our customers' applications and what they're trying to accomplish with them, how they work, what pieces are considered critical to them? And then you have to take a look at the cloud side and understand which piece and how it works, and which pieces can be moved into the cloud and which ones should not be, and then use those two together to create the new architecture.
So, Mike, how do you work with Mark on achieving these goals?
We collaborate to make sure that we're getting those SLAs and get those applications to the right level that they need to be at. Mark's spot on. You don't analyze things that much differently for a cloud world than you do for an on-prem world. You take into account where it's going to reside and how you're going to get to it. So, am I going to be able to use something that's in close proximity to me? Does that matter in this world? Because there's different places we can put your data to make that more meaningful or less meaningful based on what you're doing. You want to be able to manage these things effectively as well. So if you want to be able to get that data and replicate it to your site, or take it from your site and replicate it up to the cloud, those are considerations that you have to keep in mind as you design these applications. And then look at today's world. It's less and less about massive applications that you're going to take months and years to design to bring online, and more about microservices and small little things that you amend and change as you move forward. And now those microservices can be in different places and accessing different resources to give you what you need for your organization.
Yeah, interesting. SLAs and microservices, never put those together. My guests today are Mark Zalubas, Chief Technology Officer at Merlin International, and Mike Dye, Chief Technology Officer for Civilian NetApp U.S. Public Sector. I'm your moderator, John Gilroy, on the discussion, Guidelines for a Transition to the Hybrid Cloud. Sponsored by Merlin International and NetApp on Federal News Radio 1500 AM and federalnewsradio.com.